So this is Ronan Hart, the Samuel Proctor Oral History Program at the University of Florida. It's a little after 2 p.m. On July 10th, 2025. Today we're at The Village in Gainesville. I'm joined by Dr. Terry Morrow. So to get started, do you want to, again, say your name now that we're recording and spell it out?
My name is Terry Morrow, Terry Morrow.
All right. And Terry, when and where were you born?
I was born on June 20, 1941 in Reynoldsville, West Virginia.
So what is Reynoldsville like?
Reynoldsville is a very small community that actually was founded by my ancestors, who were named Reynolds, not surprisingly. And so it was a population of probably 200, but we owned most of the land in the community and eventually sold it off.
Do you know, when was it founded? When did your ancestors come to there? I really
don't remember.
Okay.
Okay. But it was founded by my ancestors.
Oh, wow. Do you know a whole lot about your ancestors, or even just stories maybe your grandparents told you?
I know some about them. I started doing a genealogy search and got the map partly done. And someday I need to go back to it. So I don't know a whole lot about them. I know simply that they founded that community, and I don't know much further back than that. Surprisingly, I really never knew much about my maternal ancestors. I knew quite a bit about the paternal ones, but the maternal ones, when I was first born, my grandmother was still living with us, but she passed while I was young. About the only memory I have of her is that she wore a black dress most of the time, and I really remember very little about her. And my mother never talked much about her. She talked a little bit about her father, who would have been my grandfather, and how he was the unofficial mayor of the town of Reynoldsville. And the only story that I really remember her telling, two stories I remember her telling me about him. One of them, he liked to play a fiddle. And the only song he really knew on it was Turkey in the Straw. And so anytime I do a session, which I do quite a few on music, I always comment that he liked to play Turkey in the Straw. Yeah. She tells another story about how during difficult times, people would come to the house and beg for food, which the family would not very willingly give out, apparently. Yeah. So one day, somebody was coming up to ask for food. My grandfather was walking down to get the mail on the same lane. And the person asked him how successful he was, and my grandfather replied, "Don't go up there, they're really nasty." So my mother thought that was a funny story to remember. And that's literally about all I know about my maternal grandparents.
Mm-hmm. And on your dad's side?
My dad's side lived in a community where, again, they were actually the largest farmers in that community. And so his ancestors had not formed a community, but they formed two community banks that my father and uncle actually were members, and my father was president of one of them for a long time before he passed. My uncle was on the board of directors, but they were in the cattle business. Mm-hmm. And so my family maternal family did a lot of work with cattle, and maternal too. That was their main enterprise, was livestock. And so on the paternal side, I can remember more about my paternal grandparents because they lived longer. But by the time I was born, they were both pretty much housebound. Mm. But I would go to see them. I can remember on their birthdays, my father would always send me down to the basement of that house and get soot from one of the coal stoves that was used to heat the house. And so the birthday celebration is you would always go up and rub the soot on the head of the grandparent that was having a birthday. And that's almost all I remember. Yeah. I do remember their passing. They both had bad diabetes. They both went to the hospital a few days apart. My grandfather passed first. My grandmother just gave up and passed a week later in the same hospital, which I thought was very unusual, but she was just she didn't want to continue without him.
Yeah. I've never heard of a tradition like putting soot on the forehead, I guess, except for like a Catholic, like Ash Wednesday
Oh,
thing.
this was just a joke
Just a
thing.
little
My
joke.
father got great joy out of seeing me do it.
That's pretty funny. So, how was your time as a kid growing up in kind of a rural farming
I
community?
grew up on a farm, so I had a great childhood. I never regret any second of it. A lot of the time was spent doing farm chores, obviously, so I was responsible all the way through high school of feeding the small number of cattle that we had on the farm. By the time I was born, it was reduced to a farm of probably 100 acres. It started out huge, but it was reduced. So we kept a few cattle. We kept some milk. We kept 2 or 3 milk cows. I was never able to master milking, so we had several tenant homes on the farm, and one of them we would always give free of charge to somebody that would do the milking and tend to some of the farm chores. So I remember that, but I had a great time. I had ponies, which I never was very good at riding them, but my father thought I had to have a pony, so we always had one. And I did a lot of, farm chores, so I was never able to take part in any high school sports. I did a lot of high school clubs, but I would be home from them long before I would if I'd practiced sports. So I never was able to be involved in any high school sports, but I did a lot of high school club type things. And as I said, a lot of farm chores. So we had fun. My father built a softball field for us on the farm, and so while I was younger, every day the friends would all come to the softball field, which had all the things you would want. It was a very small field, so it wasn't very exciting, but we played softball essentially 7 days a week on that field.
Did you have siblings?
I had one brother who has passed, so that was unfortunately the only sibling I ever had.
Yeah. If there were more siblings, that'd be less chores. You'd split it up a little bit more.
Well, no.
Not really.
My brother was gay, which I had a lot of trouble getting used to over the years. So he helped my mother with her chores. Well, I did all the lawn mowing and all the other farm chores. Fell on me.
Okay.
Because he was helping her. So, yeah, I've always regretted I don't have any nephews or nieces. Pat has several, so I've enjoyed having that opportunity, but I never had any.
Yeah. What was your relationship with your brother like growing up?
It was terrible growing up, which is probably, I mean, actually tear up when I think about that. Okay. I could not ever comprehend him being gay. That was back at a time when that just didn't happen. And so I had a horrible relation with him. It finally got repaired after I married Pat, and he became a very close friend.
Yeah.
But it took a lot of years.
Yeah.
And I regret that so much.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing with that. I know that
Sorry,
might be difficult.
It's a sentimental moment every time I think about it.
It is, yeah. It's amazing to be able to repair that relationship. I think a lot of people...
It was so wonderful to have done it, and we became, really good friends by the end. Yeah. And I think of all the years I missed having that opportunity.
So you said you were in a lot of clubs, even if you couldn't do sports. What kinds of things were you interested in?
Oh, French club, honor society. I spent a lot of time in something called Junior Oddfellows.
Oh, okay.
Which that was not as a part of my school. I spent a lot of time in 4-H. I did a lot of 4-H activities. So those were the main clubs that I can remember. Probably 4-H and Oddfellows took most of the time. But I was very active in both of those organizations.
Yeah. Did you always know you were going to go to college? Is that something your parents expected of you?
That's something they expected. My mother, I'm not sure she even graduated from high school. And it's interesting that we just never talked about it. And I honestly have no idea. My father went to high school And he went to something, a normal college, they called it back in those days, which I think was a combination of high school and college. So he had gone to that in Gainesville, not Gainesville, good heavens. The town had a name, it just escaped me. But he went away to college and high school at the same time. And so it was always assumed I would go to college. It was always assumed that I would go to West Virginia University, which I did. The expectation was I would go there and then come back and manage the family farm, which was still pretty large. He and his brother and sister, when my grandfather passed, it was divided 3 ways between them. But my brother and my dad ran it for the sister, and, you know, my father bought a lot of extra farms, so I would have had a very nice sized farm. But even though I was sure that's what I wanted to do, I graduated from West Virginia University, and I told my grandfather, you know, I'm going to go get a master's degree. It will help us on the farm. So I went and got the master's degree. When I finished it, I thought, you know, I ought to really have a doctorate. It would be so useful on the farm, or so I told my father. So I went and got it. So one of the very sad things I had to do in my life was to meet with my father on one of the trips home and say, you know, they've offered me a faculty position, so I'm going to accept it and stay up there. And so it meant I would never be back to the farm except for visits. And that was very, very sad news to my father, because he had always expected I would go home and manage the farm. But not surprisingly, he and my brother, who was a veterinarian, his father had always expected the same thing. They had laid out a plan for a building for a veterinary office, and my cousin was going to go home, run their farm, and be a veterinarian. He had to tell his father, I've got an offer to join a veterinary practice in southern West Virginia. So he never went home either. So neither one of them had the expectations they had. My uncle had no children, so it was a different situation with him.
So going back a little bit to when you started going to West Virginia University, it was kind of expected that you would be studying agricultural engineering, is that right?
Well, it was expected I'd be studying something in agriculture, and I decided ag engineering was the closest to what I would like to study. I wasn't really very much of a fan of biology and that type of thing, so I decided to go into engineering. Yeah.
Did you still find yourself, you know, broadening your interests or learning about different types of things when you went off to college? You know, you kind of get away from the farm and you're at suddenly this...
Oh yeah, I learned, you know, a lot of things that I never knew existed. Engineering on the farm, you don't talk much about engineering, so I learned a lot about branches of engineering and things that really interested me, and that's why I decided to pursue a master's. I thought that would be really useful to know a bit more about. I'd always assumed that I would go back and manage the farm, but I had also always assumed that I would own a dealership for farm equipment. I was a fairly good mechanic. In fact, one of the places where we dealt with buying equipment wanted me to come and join them and manage their equipment practice. And so at one point my father said, why don't you just come back and run the farm and manage that part-time too, so you can do both. So either I would have owned a practice or I would have joined the other equipment dealership, but none of that happened.
You said you don't talk much about engineering on the farm, but I would think if you have to fix these mechanisms and tractors all the time, you basically got an education in engineering.
It was, well, one would question whether it was engineering or not, but yeah, I was actually a pretty good mechanic, and I did most of the mechanical work on the farm. And that's why engineering, really appealed to me as a possibility.
Yeah. What was the culture like at West Virginia University? This is kind of the 60s. counterculture movement
Well,
starting? Not really felt so much?
I joined a fraternity, and so my experience after the first semester was almost totally driven by what happened in the fraternity. And that culture was much different than the general culture. While I was there was always a big debate between the town and the people that went to the university. So if we went to a movie at night, we always went in a group because there were almost guaranteed to be fights between the high school or the college, non-college kids and the college kids. So you had to be very careful when you came out of a late movie to come out in a group, or you would go home not quite in as good a shape as you went.
Oh, wow. Did you stay involved with the fraternity afterwards?
No, I did not, which surprised me a little bit. I went back one time, and that's the only contact I ever had with them. I didn't have any contact with any of the people I was very close with in the fraternity, except for those that I had gone to high school with and still were in the same fraternity. So I still stay in contact with a few of them, but other than that, I have no contact with anybody from the fraternity, which has surprised me, but that's just the way it was.
Maybe, yeah. Are there any other experiences from that time that kind of stand out looking back at West Virginia University?
There's some I probably don't want recorded.
Okay, that's fine.
But we did, one of the things that we enjoyed doing was building floats and entering contests as a fraternity. So the farm came in handy because my uncle would bring a big trailer, a wagon down to us to build the float on each year. And he would deliver it, and I would meet him, and I'd take him to the fraternity, he would leave it, and then when it was over, we would call him, and he would come back and pick it up. I remember the first time we did that, the fraternity said, "That is so wonderful. When he comes back to get it, we're going to give him a fifth of whiskey to thank him." Well, I had to explain to him that he would probably pull out a shotgun and shoot him on the spot. So my family was absolutely non-alcoholic. I never saw any alcohol even talked about when I grew up. While I was in the fraternity, I learned to drink, as it's pretty hard to not do if you're in a fraternity. So I had some interesting experiences there that will remain in my book, not in this. But we had a good time. We would, as I said, enter a lot of contests. We had some interesting pranks, one of which I would still be in prison for, and I don't mind sharing it. Back in those days, you had to spend 2 years in ROTC. I don't know if it even exists anymore, but at that time, you did have to spend 2 years. I joined the Air Force because I had applied for the Army, ROTC, and when they interviewed me, they said, "We don't have any use for an agricultural engineer, go away." And the Air Force needed people because nobody wanted to join the Air Force at that time, so I was in the Air Force ROTC. Every week, you would have to have a march we had a big area that you marched on, and so they always put up a flag to let you know that you were to come down for the hour's march. One day after we had had a celebratory party the night before, none of us thought it would be much fun to go march. So the group of us that were in the Air Force ROTC drew straws as to see who would do something really stupid, and I drew the short straw, so I had the honor of calling them and telling them that I was the secretary to the lieutenant that was in charge of ROTC. He had to take an emergency phone call, so the march was canceled for that day. So we all watched, and always they put up a flag to tell you the flag went down, and so I was a big hero in there. Eventually, the flag went back up, but we claimed we didn't have to go because when we looked, it was down. And I never got discovered. I'd have been in huge trouble. So that was a prank that shouldn't have happened, but did.
Yeah. I'm sure the statute of limitations has passed.
Well, I hope so. I hope so.
Oh, that's pretty funny. So did you stay at WVU for your master's degree? Or did
No,
you
I
go
went to
somewhere
Penn
else?
State.
Okay.
I interviewed, or didn't interview, I applied at Michigan State and Penn State. Michigan State said they would offer me a temporary assistantship, but they wanted to see how I did the first semester, and Michigan was further away than Penn State, so Penn State offered me a full assistantship, so I accepted it and never even interviewed at Michigan. I just accepted Penn State and stayed there for most of my career.
Did you have any sense that you were going to stay there so long?
No, I thought I was going just for a master's and then back to the farm.
So how'd you, I guess you mentioned that you thought maybe it'd help with the farm, staying longer for
Well, I
PhD?
thought that, but when I went to Penn State and got the assistantship, I assumed I would be working with machinery because that's where I was really good. But they talked to me, I still can't understand how I accepted this, but they talked me into working with a professor who was really very well known in his field, which was called rheology, which you I assume have never heard of, Rheology. It has to do with the physical properties of, in my case, of plants and animals. So my master's degree concentrated almost totally on determining the firmness of apples in storage. And so every week I would go pull apples out of a cold storage, measure them with a big machine that we had for sensing the strength of them. And I would do this time after time after time. And that had absolutely nothing to go with the farm. We had apples on the farm, but we certainly weren't a commercial producer.
Yeah.
And so from there, my initial career was focused entirely on physical properties of plants and animals. So I think it was in my mind, I really always knew I didn't want to go back to the farm. Part of it is my father and I had a good relationship, but if I had gone back, as long as he was there and able, I would have been one of his employees, and I just didn't think that's what I wanted.
Yeah.
And didn't have the nerve to tell him for a long time.
Yeah.
So I did that, and then I decided I would stay for a PhD. We didn't have a PhD program in agricultural engineering at the time. So we looked around, and I actually got my final degree in the Department of Materials Engineering. I can't even remember what it's called. That's terrible. But it was a department not part of agricultural engineering. So my major professor had to be from the other department. And I actually did the PhD on something relating sort of to the farm. I would measure the tensile strength of cattle as they were slaughtered. So every week I would go over to the slaughterhouse because they slaughtered some of their cattle. They grew weekly, and they would cut off a small slab just as they bring them out of the slaughterhouse. I would take it back and put it in what's called Ringer's solution to keep it, and then I would measure its tensile strength for a week in two different directions, the direction of the muscle and the direction opposed to the muscle. And I would do that for several hours until rigor mortis had set in. And the intent was to do that to determine if when they slaughtered cattle, if they hung them in a different way, if it would actually make the meat more tender than using the traditional way of hanging them. That went nowhere except for my degree, but at least I got the degree. And so that was not really what I did, because most of the time after that I dealt entirely with fruits and vegetables.
So my understanding is that there are a lot of changes happening in the agricultural sciences around this period, like the Green Revolution, new forms of fertilizers and different things. Was it an exciting time to kind of be in this field?
It was a very exciting time. It was and my part in that was not related to the Green Revolution necessarily, but I did a lot of work while I was a student, and then as I became a faculty member on harvesting and handling. We did a lot of building of equipment for helping with harvesting and handling, and a lot of things in the grapeyard that we can talk about. And then I also did a lot of work on mechanization of handling fruit after they go into into a storage or processing facility, and greenhouses, etc. So I actually went to a lot of different areas, none of which had anything to do with animal agriculture after I got my degree.
This is the first one you said you did a lot of work in the graveyard?
I did, yes, I did work on, if you grow grapes, mainly in Pennsylvania, a lot of Concord grapes are growing. And the problem is the vines tend to entwine with each other. And so we had a major contract dealing with building a machine that would mechanically separate the vines, which is a lot of hard work for labor. And even at that time, migrant labor was hard to get, and they just couldn't find enough people to help maintain the vineyards. So I did a lot of work with building this machine that we actually used a street sweeper and converted it to a vertical machine that we would do them. We also did work on things like determining whether the quality of wine from grapes is better if you press the grapes while they're still in the field, or if you let them sit a while before you begin to press them. So we did that sort of work. We did work on mechanization of the harvesting machines for grapes and other things, but we did work on mechanization of grapes and the harvesters, including trying to replace the man that by law had to stand at the top of a mechanical harvester when they're harvesting grapes. He had to inspect it, and you can't do it at the speed they come across. So in theory, he was standing there to inspect the grapes. His sole function was to throw mice off as they came by so they wouldn't get crushed and put into the grapes. So the number of mice in the grape juice had to be at some small number. But that was a state law that you had to have somebody pulling out the mice.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Yeah, wow, that's right. We didn't share that information with too many people.
No, you wouldn't want to. So was this a lot of work being supported by, I guess, the state government?
Yeah, I got a lot of funding from different organizations. That work would be funded mainly by the state growers organization that always had a fund. If you belonged to the growers organization, they had a research fund, and we got a lot of work on it, probably more for potatoes than we did for grapes, because we did work on building what we called an artificial potato. If you've ever seen a potato packing plant, the potatoes come down a line. They're sorted by size by just dropping through a hole that they fit through on the sorting line. And they get bruised very hard as they come down that packing line. So we built a mechanical potato that had sensors in it that would transmit to a computer. As they went down, you would be able to sense the amount of force that they're getting. And the intent was to then change the angle and the speed and the padding and all of those things in the packing line. So we did quite a bit of that. We did work on color sorting of fruit, mainly apples, so that you could sort them automatically according to the color of them. And I had students that did that.
Yeah, that's pretty revolutionary to get computers and color sensing.
At that time, it was. There was not many people doing it. And that was funded actually by National Science Foundation. So we got a lot of grants from NSF.
So is that the point that you were starting to learn about computers and how to work into
That's my first experience with a computer was when I was at West Virginia University. One of the faculty took me down to a computer shed that they had. At that time, it was unheard of to have computers, so he introduced me to an IBM mainframe computer. And so I got fascinated by that. So my master's and Ph.D. was all done with punch cards. You probably don't even know what a punch card is.
I have an image.
You do? An image?
I might.
So I would spend many nights in the conference center producing punch cards. And that's the way you programmed everything. But then I became interested in personal computers when they first came out. So I was a faculty member by then, and so I built a lab or a room in our wherever the department was, and I equipped it with what was called Trash 80 at that time, which again may be a foreign term to you. It was the first Radio Shack personal computer, was about the first computer that people could afford to buy. So we got funding to put those in the classroom, and then some of us would insist that the students use them to prepare their lab reports, etc. And from there, I became very interested in personal computers. So I built and talked the College of Agriculture into putting rooms aside, entire rooms aside in different buildings within the college, and equipping them with personal computers. And I developed classes for teaching students how to use personal computers.
Yeah. Is that the picture you showed me earlier?
That's one I showed you later on. Yeah, that's one.
Yeah, let me get that out. So I think it's pretty remarkable.
Terrible pictures.
I think it's pretty good.
And that, yeah. Yeah, that's one of the classrooms.
Oh, my goodness, yeah.
You got it?
This looks like, yeah, got it. Looks like
It's a bad picture. Huh? But after I moved on to become a faculty member, towards the end, I can talk some more about a lot of the other things I did while I was there, but towards the end of my career, I spent half time working for the computer center at Penn State. And my responsibility was putting technology in classrooms in every department at Penn State. And then I also helped put technology classrooms in every different campus. We had, I think, 27 campuses at the time. So we ended up putting technology in each of those campuses, sometimes only one room per campus, but at least it was a start. And so we would put in a lot of computers, but we would also put in presentation stations that had IBM and Windows computers and Mac computers. We would have old projectors that you would use for projecting slides. We'd have a 35 millimeter projector, and we would have all kinds of projection equipment. And so we built and patented a lot of those and had them built, and we were selling them. Well, the university owned the patent, but we were selling them to anybody that wanted to buy one as a complete unit. And so that was a major part of my career at Penn State. Is I really enjoyed the success I had in putting technology into classrooms. So we had a lot of faculty that then started making all of their presentations using PowerPoint and et cetera. And that was a big revolution. We were very happy with that, and that was right at the time when it was ripe for doing that.
Definitely a revolution. I mean, you said it started out trying to convince the university to just put these computers in one room in your department, and then suddenly you're in charge of putting them in every campus.
Yeah,
was that difficult
grew.
to push for that, to make that push, or convincing people that this was something worthwhile?
Well, the university had a I forget what it was called. I called it Technology Committee, I think. Mm-hmm. And we also had a Classroom Improvement Committee. And between the two of them, we were pretty successful in getting major funding for doing that. One of the truly revolutionary things that we did is I insisted that every time we got that funding and every time that we were able to equip a new classroom, we put a percentage of the funding for that classroom in a capital improvement fund. Because what happens with a lot of that kind of program is you get the money to put something in, but you have no money to renovate it. And within 5 years, every piece of computer equipment needs to be replaced. So we laid aside a sinking fund that we had enough money so that at the end of 5 years, we were able to do the same thing going forward.
Yeah.
And the other part of what I did then when I moved to that field was to work on continuing education, not continue education, but digital online education. So we did a lot of work. I talk more about that when we talk about Florida, but we did a lot of work on teaching faculty how to do digital, distance education.
Yeah. So you were teaching this whole time too? You had classrooms?
When I was teaching, yeah. I didn't have a lot of research contracts the last few years while I was doing half-time at the computer center, but I was still teaching. Okay. And I was still maintaining one research project that spent a lot of time on, and that was frost protection of fruits and vegetables. So that was a major thing that we did, was to manage, and that wasn't totally unknown. Frost protection of fruit and vegetables, as you well know in Florida, is a real problem. And it was in Pennsylvania, mainly for apples and for strawberries. And so we would spend a lot of time building irrigation systems that are used. It's hard to imagine how this works, but if you actually spray water on an apple blossom when it's ripe, you can protect it, because what happens is that ice melts, the fusion heat that's given off as it converts from ice to water, there's enough heat given off that it will protect the bud of, people find it very strange that you would freeze buds, but you protect them by freezing them and then letting it melt, and that provides enough heat that the apple blossom is preserved. So we did work on, I had a student that built an artificial apple blossom, for example, so that he could sense what happened on a very small sensor, the same way that the apple blossom did. I had other students that we tried to develop a system so that you did continually spray. It takes a lot of water to spray it all night. So we developed a system that would monitor the temperature of the apple blossom, because we would put what's called a thermocouple in some of the apple blossoms, and we would monitor their temperature, and then we would only apply ice when the temperature was starting to get low again. So we did a lot of that type of thing, and a lot of sleepless nights while they were being irrigated.
Yeah. Oh wow. So what do you think? I guess, did you find a passion for teaching?
I love teaching. I still really miss teaching.
Yeah.
I was a terrible teacher. I got terrible teacher reviews.
What?
But students a few years later would come back and say, "Oh, I learned so much from you. I just didn't realize it at the time." But during the time I was teaching, I was on the low end of the teacher reviews. That was back at a time when every teacher, and maybe they still do, I don't know, had to be reviewed by the students every semester. And if you were tough on students, you didn't get a very good review. Okay. And so we had a associate dean that swore that nobody should be on the faculty unless they were in the top half of the reviews. And I kept trying to explain to him, that's really ridiculous, because the top half of the reviews doesn't mean that everybody is bad. It just means some are better than others. But even today, I have a great passion for teaching and still really love doing it.
Yeah, that must be especially rewarding, kind of nurturing these research projects for students who are coming up with creative solutions.
Oh, it was. I really enjoyed it. Yeah, very much, yeah. But I enjoyed developing new classes probably more than I did new research projects.
Yeah. Okay. Well, changing gear a little bit, did you meet your wife, Pat, while you were at Penn State, or before that?
Well, she's my second wife.
Okay.
Okay. I married when I shouldn't have, but I had two wonderful children because of that, so I can't complain too much. But we just weren't right for each other. And so we got divorced very painfully, but we did get divorced. And then Pat had actually been married to a faculty member in the same department I was, and I knew her remotely. Well, I knew her casually, I should say, and I didn't see much about her. She got divorced, and he moved on to another university, and I had set up a statewide program for, I don't even remember what group it was, some engineering group that I was involved in, and she worked for the conference center at Penn State, and she was the person assigned to help me with that program that I was doing. And I met her again then, and a friend of mine that knew her quite well said, "Oh, you should really ask her out." So one Valentine's Day I did, and a few months later we were married.
That's pretty quick.
Huh? Well, a few months, a few months could have been more than a year, but
Okay, fair enough.
later we were married. How about I
Yeah.
say it that way?
Yeah, but if you knew it was right, did you feel like you knew it was right from the beginning?
Well, I had a very limited experience with, I was very shy and still am. And so I really had a very, very limited experience with dating at all. And so I can't tell you how fortunate I am to know Pat and how she's stuck with me for over 40 years. We've had a wonderful life.
Wow.
So that's been a joy.
Do you have any advice on how to make a marriage work for 40 years?
Marry Pat.
Marry Pat?
No, I don't. She's very tolerant of everything I do. So she's, and likewise, we've just had a great relation.
Yeah. So when did the two of you come to Florida?
We came here in let me think a minute, 97.
Did you come for the University of Florida? Was it a career
Well,
move?
no, actually, I had worked 30 years at Penn State as a faculty member.
Wow.
And so they had a package where they were trying to get people to retire, you know, and so they had a very good package, a retirement package. And even though I wasn't ready to leave Penn State, I decided, you know, it's time to retire. And 2 or 3 years before that, we had bought a piece of property down here because I had friends. One of them I had worked with at Penn State before he came here. And we would come to visit them, decided we liked Gainesville, and so we bought a piece of property planning to build a house on it at some point. So I did that. My friend called me one day and said, you know, there's an opening down here for a faculty, not a faculty member, but a staff member in one of the departments. I was coming down to a conference, and so I drove up at my own expense to meet the head, and she arranged a meeting with her committee, and so I got offered a job on the spot and decided we were going to move to our new house sooner rather than later. So we moved much sooner than we anticipated because we had thought we would remain at Penn State for a few more years beyond the 30. I thought I'd remain there till 65, but it didn't happen. So I came here for 6 years on the faculty.
So you're planning to build your own house, but then you get rushed down. Did you have a house to move into?
No, we lived in an apartment for 7 months while they built our house. While we were still in Pennsylvania, we started designing it, and a friend of ours knew an architect that we engaged with, and so when we came down here, we had great fun in the apartment. Pat actually built a 3D model of what the house was going to be. I do all the floor plans, etc., and she built a model that amazed our architect. And so we had it. We would keep moving things around. She put all the furniture pieces in it. So we had a 3D scale model of the entire house. And so we found a builder, and then he built it to our specs.
That's pretty cool. I mean, roughly, where was this piece of land that you're building the house on?
It's Turkey Creek, if you know Turkey Creek.
Okay, yeah.
It's here.
Yeah. Were you keeping any fruit trees or cattle or any farm stuff to make you feel like home?
Well, after we moved there, we decided we wanted to buy the lot beside us that was for sale, so we bought another lot, and I put in every kind, not every kind, I put in a dozen or so different kind of fruit trees, banana trees, you know, all different kinds of things. Now, we had some fruit, but the birds liked it better than we did, so we loved to grow some of them, but the birds kumquats were one of our favorites, and the birds loved them. And dates, we had good date tree, but it's very hard to keep the birds away from them.
Yeah.
And so finally, we tore it down. We sold half of it to a contractor to build a house on, and the other half I built a shop to attach to our house. So we ended up building a fairly big shop attached to the house out in Turkey Creek.
Okay, well that gets to your woodworking then. You're showing me something about that. When did you start woodworking?
Oh, probably when I was 6 or 7. Okay. When I was in elementary school, we had a project that they wanted everybody to build something and bring it in for a contest. So my father built a birdhouse for me. My father didn't build it. He helped me do it. He insisted I do every piece of work on it. And so we built a birdhouse that my son still has. That was my first experience. I decided I really loved woodworking. And so it's hard to live on a farm and not do woodworking. We had a fairly good wood shop on the farm. And so I would do a lot of things in it. And unbeknownst to my father, when I would come home after school and he wasn't there, I would go in and use a lot of his power tools and be very careful to dust them off and put them back exactly where they came from. And so I did a lot of experimenting, some very foolish things. On the farm, we had an old workshop that had been there for years because you had to do your own horseshoes and all that sort of things. And so it had a lot of tools in it that were almost unusable, but I spent a lot of time trying to do things with them. One of the dumbest things I ever did, I always wondered how much pressure it took to set off a shotgun shell. So I took one of my father's shotgun shells, unbeknownst to him, obviously, cut it off, took all of the powder out of it, and just left the firing pin. I went and put the firing pin in a vise in the shop, took one of the punches that were in the old shop and an old hammer, put the punch on the back of the firing pin, and hit it. You talk about being stupid. It threw the pin, the punch out of my hand, of course, and went up to the pin, went out of the vise and up to the roof. And it would have taken my head off if I'd been so dumb. Okay. But that wasn't, I thought that was fun. I really enjoyed seeing that. So the other thing I would do, unbeknownst to my father, is we kept a 22 pistol in the cabinet. Where back then you always kept guns all over the house. Almost everybody that could afford them did. So we had a 22 that I would usually take when I went out to feed the cattle at night and shoot at random things. I was actually pretty careful. But I would get friends and I would take my pony, and my brother had a pony that he never sat on, so I'd donate it to one of my friends. We'd ride up on the hill to a coal mine, or coal strip mine that we had, that had a room in it of stone, a lot of huge stones. So we would take one of the shells that we had, and this would be, at the time, a full shotgun shell. We'd put it up in the crevice between two stones, sit back with either our BB guns or my father's pistol and shoot at it and see if anybody could hit that. I mean, you're dumb when you're young. Fortunately, we were never able to hit it, or we probably would have come right back and taken us arrowheads off. So you do lots of really dumb things along the way.
Yeah.
Talking about dumb things, the other one that we would do, the Junior Oddfellows I talked about, there was an older gentleman who would do a lot of things with us. He was a wonderful man. I learned so much. He was a tremendous artist. We bought a lot of photographer. He became a commercial photographer for a TV station. And so he couldn't drive. He had had an accident where, unfortunately, somebody had been killed in a car accident. So he lost his license for 20 years or so. So when he got a job as a photographer and TV specialist for a local TV station, video specialist, I would drive him to different places and then go back to the studio with him, and he would show me how to develop film, how to process, 16 millimeter tapes, etc. But he would have a lot of us go to his house at night for parties and whatever. I said he was gay, but he never made any approach to anybody. He was just a very good man. He had an old bobsled, a 4-person bobsled, and he had an old Jeep. One of the other dumb things that we would do is hook that bobsled behind the Jeep, and we would pull that bobsled behind the Jeep. And that was so stupid, because if the sled went faster than the Jeep, we would have again been severed. You don't do bright things when you're young.
Yeah, it's amazing you're sitting here right in front of us after all that.
Well, that's not the. Well, I enjoy telling old time stories.
Yeah.
In high school, I had a friend that had a pickup truck. We had a new stretch of road put in that one of our goals was to see whether you could get up to 100 miles an hour in that short stretch of road. But the other goal was to take his pickup truck. We only did this, I think, once because we realized how dumb it was. He insisted that, and none of us drank. I mean, absolutely nobody in this group ever drank at that point. So we went out on that strip of road, got up to, I don't know, maybe 40 miles an hour. He would be driving. There would be three of us in the truck. He would say, all right, we'll go change drivers. He would open the door, put his foot on the gas pedal. The person next to him would slide over, take over the wheel and the gas pedal. And we would just do a rotation of all the drivers until we got to the end of the road. I shudder. So we decided that wasn't really too wise. So we terminated that project.
Yeah, but you had some fun with it while you could.
We did have fun.
Yeah. Well, I guess if you can call that a hobby, we were talking about hobbies. You also showed me this.
It is a hobby. It is a hobby. I never had a house that didn't have some type of a wood shop.
Yeah.
Most of them were in my basement. I had a lot of wood shops in the basement. I had one when I lived in Turkey Creek that was a real wood shop.
Yeah.
When I moved here, one of the reasons I moved to the village is I wanted to continue woodworking. There were several people in the village at the time that were very good woodworkers. So there was a little part of a building over in Lake House that they called the Sawdust Therapy Room. And I went and looked at it. It had really old tools in it. Hardly anybody used it. So I asked somebody, could we form a committee to try to make that into a group for the village? So we formed a committee, and I volunteered to bring some of my tools that I had here. And so some of the major tools that I had, we completely stripped out that room. We filled it with the tools that I had brought, and then we started getting other people to join. So over the years, we probably had 20 or 30 people. I'd have monthly meetings that have as many as 40 people come, and we would show things that we had built, show what you could do. I'd do demonstrations on how to build pens, etc. And so we did a lot of that. So one of the reasons we expanded it, there was a lady here who was a wonderful artist. She specialized in knitting, and so she would give seminars on knitting. She would do demonstrations on how she did wool. She would take the actual wool from the sheep and spin it and do all of that. And she came to me one day and said, I have an 90th birthday coming up next week. Would you be willing to show me how to use a lathe? I've always wanted to do woodworking. Wow. So on her 90th birthday, I showed her how to make, I think it was probably a letter opener at that time. She became enthralled with it. So almost 5 days a week for the next few years, while she was able to, she would come into the shop and spend 2 or 3 hours making things. She would give them all away or keep them. She would never let me take any of them to sell, as I'll talk about in a minute. And I said, let us sell them. No. So she had a 2-bedroom apartment. One of them she converted to a showroom. And so she would lay all of her things out, as she called them, on that table. Anybody who would walk by that she didn't know, she would invite them in and say, come and look at my stuff. And so she just had a ball. So she came to me one day and said, we need a bigger shop. There's too many of us working in here now, and I can't get in here every day. So she gave me offered to give the village a significant amount of money. Pat and I made up the rest of it. And so the two groups of us supported building the small shop that we have now that is just filled with every kind of tool that you could want. It's just too small. And so that was the start of it. Initially, we had a lot of people coming into it. We would have 20 people at some times, not all at once, but they would come in and do all kinds of things. We would have as many as 4 lathes running simultaneously
Wow.
some days. Now we're down to really 3 of us in there a lot of the time, and I have no idea why. Our main goal is to have a place where you can build things for yourself, and to fund it, we build and sell a lot of things at a community sale. So we have a showcase in Tower Club. We have another small one that has very little in it over in the bistro in Center Point. And so we build a lot of things. We build a lot of on-sale items, on-demand items, or on request, for spatial items for people. We build, unfortunately, we've built, I think, 3 ash cremains boxes. And we build a lot of bowls on demand. I just built and sold 5 gator signs to one of the staff here. He's given me a request for 5 more, and they're not cheap. So we do a lot of that sort of thing on demand.
Yeah.
And I really should have pulled out some of those, but I didn't think of it.
That's okay.
But we really, woodworking has become a real passion. The village gives us some money each year so that we can afford to sell things way below what the market cost would be at a standard craft show. And part of the reason we like to do it is we have people here that never leave the village, and this is a way for them to buy presents. They buy a lot of Christmas presents, not necessarily, and things for themselves, but most of them they buy to ship off as presents. And so we do a lot of woodworking still. I used to do a lot of resin work. I made a lot of jewelry, and that was a real passion of mine. And I had a lot. When I say a lot, forgive me, I tend to use that word way too much. To me, 2 is a lot. But anyway, I had several residents come in and make jewelry for themselves and for gifts. But eventually that quit happening. I made animal molds for a while, and that quit happening. I had a lot of bowl molds for a while, and that quit. So I arranged with somebody to sell all of my molds and resin equipment. And then one of the staff here came to me and said, let's set up a class at night making resin bowls. So we went back into the resin business, and now we have a nice demand, 3 at a time, of people coming in and making resin bowls at night. And that's been very good. We're going to start doing coasters, which you'll call paperweights. Next month we will be doing coasters with seashells in them. And so we're going to continue that project. And I do a lot of teaching, again I'm using the word I shouldn't, of people that want to come to the wood shop and learn how to do woodwork. We have several people that come, and that's the first time they've ever done any woodwork. One of the things you could see, there's a bowl laying on the table that was made in the wood shop by somebody that when he was near 90, came here into the village. He came to me and said, I'd like to learn how to do woodworking. He now makes beautiful canes. He makes all kinds of bowls, absolutely magnificent bowls, and he never did it. He's now 93, I think. He was a high-end musician. He was, I think, dean of the department, or head of the department of choral music at UF.
Wow. He
was music director at Chautauqua for a long time. For a few years, he was in charge of Gainesville Choral Society. And so, music was his passion, but now it's wood. The other person that does a lot of the work in the wood shop is somebody named Dan Schmidt, S-C-H-M-I-D-T. He is a much more detailed craftsman than I am. We have 3 types of people that work in the wood shop. We have those that want to get something done quick and finished, and the one that did that has decided not to be in the wood shop anymore, so we miss him. Then we have Dan that insists everything must be done to the finest detail, and I'm in between the 2 extremes. Okay?
Happy medium.
Happy medium. But Dan he worked for a company that was in charge of rocket launches at the Cape, and he spent, I think, his entire career working for that company, dealing with not manned rockets, but the unmanned rocket program. So he would have an interesting background.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's pretty amazing about this place how much there is to do and how important that is.
It's extremely important. Unfortunately, what has always, excuse me for pushing my glasses up, they don't want to stay. One of the things that I make a speech all the time about is we all wait too late to move in to the village. Pat and I moved in time, and we're very happy that we did. But now we're finding most of the people that move here have waited way too long. So one or the other, if it's a couple, needs care. And so there's a lot of people that say, I would love to come to the wood shop and can't do it because my spouse needs me to stay at home with dementia or physical or something. And so that's a real problem. Personally, I sometimes think there may be too much to do because there's so many activities here that it's just hard. Pat and I used to go to almost everything. We hardly go to anything anymore. And I'm not sure, well, it's just more difficult. I have to use my power chair, and she has problems, so we just don't take part. And we're probably the standard for a lot of the people that are moving here now. There's some that do everything, but there are others that just don't do anything.
Yeah.
One of the real treasures are the trips that they take out of the village. I go on all the cruises now, and I don't go on the day trips, but their day trips are really great, and they have a group that go every day trip, take part in every day trip they can, and a few overnight trips. But there's a lot to do in the village, but people wait too long to move here to do it.
Too long as in they don't get a chance to kind of settle into the community while they can still take part?
Too long as they're physically and mentally not able to take part the way they could have. Ideally, people would move here at age 55, but you don't see that happening. That's the legal age to move here because of the nature of the community. But people just wait too long. And I have so many people that come to the wood shop saying, oh, this is wonderful, I'd love to do it, I have a lot of experience. I never see them again.
Yeah.
But we do have a few. I have one man that's in a wheelchair that had never done woodworking that now comes every week and does something. And that to me is wonderful. And we have people, Dennis, who you met last week, made a pen.
Really?
Monday. She was so excited about it that she's telling the world how she made it. And that's the sort of thing I get great joy out of. If I did nothing else, I would love to just teach people how to do woodworking.
Yeah.
It's such fun.
Yeah. So that's certainly one piece of advice to people is, moving to here, someplace like this when you're a bit younger. Do you have any other advice for people who are thinking about retirement, thinking about that next part of their life? Anything that you wish you knew when you were at that age?
Honestly, I wish I knew how much fun retirement can be. I think a lot of people say work is really bad, but one of the good things I've been able to do all my life is to close the door. Almost every project I had, either teaching or doing research, had a 6-year cycle. It's amazing, but if I went back and traced my life, almost everything I've done had a 6-year cycle. I was president of a homeowners association for 6 years, and the list goes on and on and on. And what I'm really saying is, I think what people need to do, in my opinion, or at least for me, is to walk out the door. When you retire and not look back. Because I think too many people stay connected to their previous life, and it's just not the same. Okay, and find something new to do. In my case, it wasn't new, but I expanded woodworking. And I'm very heavily involved now, at least, in the resident council here, which is a group of residents that interact with administration on different things. And we're trying to get more people involved in technology. We're trying to form a resident technology group here because it's a big problem getting help with all the computers and TVs, et cetera, that people have now. And so we're trying to find a group of residents that will be willing to help other residents with their technology needs. And that's the sort of thing that if you retire and you have that experience, make use of it.
Yeah.
Don't just sit and read your book all day. Okay?
Yeah.
And to me, that's the secret, is to be able to move on and not regret having to, especially if you had to retire at a given age.
Yeah.
Don't regret doing it. Just move on and forget your past. But
Yeah.
that's only me. It's not for everybody.
Yeah. So these 2 books that you showed me, were these retirement projects? Or
Well, those books are interesting. During COVID, I had a pretty bad case of COVID. I spent a week in the hospital and a few weeks down at Okamic Rehab. And while I was there, I, resolved to do 2 things. One of them, I thought I was in a lot worse shape than I was, and I resolved that when I came home, I was going to try to record some of the history of my life. And so that was one of my things. But the other thing I decided to do was to lose weight. So I came home and managed to lose 100 pounds, which made me very happy.
Wow.
That book was what started it. My daughter and son, for my birthday one year, gave me a subscription to that company that every week they would send you a new question that my kids and grandkids got together and generated the questions, and they would send me a different question each week, and I would answer that question. I reformatted them and added them, but it forced me to think back on my history, and it was a wonderful experience of writing that book. And so I wrote it, and part of the deal was they publish it, the company publishes it, and I cannot talk enough about how wonderful an experience it is to be able to do that for people that have never tried to write, to just be able to, I'm trying to think of the name of the company.
Yeah, I'm looking for it in the table of contents.
It's in there someplace. But that's really a great thing that I think a lot of people should take advantage of. So that was such fun that I belonged to a fishing group that I said we went fishing every week, every year for a week for about 50 years. And so when I finished writing that, I thought it was great fun. So 2 members in my group had written and published books. One of them, I think he's on his 8th book now, and he published it all. Another one published a bibliography of his life. And I thought, that's fun. We've done this fishing all this time. So I said to him, let's write a book about our fishing experience. Well, it turned out that trying to group write is not a very successful project.
You don't usually see that many names.
So it ended up that I wrote the book with some contribution from them.
Yeah.
But we put everybody's name on it, and they did add a lot of stories, and a lot of their photos are in it. But we wrote that, and I found out how to publish. So I learned a lot about self-publishing and found a wonderful editor and publisher, and published it through Amazon. And that, to me, it's a fantastic retirement project for anybody. And it's not that difficult. It's really not that difficult to write a book because there are a lot of ways to do it. And I actually gave one seminar, at least here, on how to self-publish. And it's something that more people should take advantage of, and they don't.
Absolutely.
And that would be another piece of advice I guess I would have, is to publish, even if you think nobody's ever going to look at it.
Yeah.
Publish at least your history, and do a lot of search. It's so easy now to do searching, and I don't do as much of it as I should, but I would love to write another book of my family's background, and that may never happen. But when I get to where I can't go in the shop, my hope is to be able to write some more books.
Yeah, I hope so,
because
too.
I can do them sitting here.
Yeah. So, starting to wrap up here, I do want to ask, now being able to look back across your life, what from your career, from your personal life, would you say you're most proud of, maybe your accomplishments?
My most proud of accomplishment is my part in helping to introduce faculty to using technology for teaching.
Yeah.
Okay? And that's the thing I truly am most proud of, without a doubt. My research never amounted to any great shakes for anybody. But I think my time spent on technology really was a bonus.
Yeah.
And I used it, I was director of the graphics and photography units for both the university and the College of Medicine here. And so that I was really proud of some of the things we were able to do there too.
Yeah.
But it all related to increasing use of technology in the educational sector.
Yeah.
I'm proud of a lot of the things I've done with organizations, but they're second to the other. I spent a lot of time revamping a homeowners association, for example, but most of the people that I did it with were not that proud of what we did, but it really was a good accomplishment.
Yeah.
But it pales compared to what I did with technology.
Yeah. It seems like that kind of teaching and introducing people to new skills is a theme.
It
life.
is something I'm very, very proud of, yeah, and still like to do all I can.
Yeah. Okay. Is there any more advice or final reflections that you would want to give to anyone if you think about maybe your grandkids or your great-grandkids listening to this?
Well, I'm really dismayed that, and it's not just me, it's the world, I think. When I grew up, kids and grandkids were so much a part of the family.
Yeah.
Now my kids and grandkids all live in the same town near Chicago. I seldom see them. I hear from them by text. I seldom hear a phone call. And I miss that so much because I was used to, I know it's difficult, but I really miss seeing them. And I'm not able to travel anymore. I used to go at least once a year to see them. And that is really a sad thing for me. And a lot of it is because of technology. It's so easy now to simply send off a message and say that takes care of it.
Yeah.
And it's not the same as a phone call or a visit.
Yeah.
So my advice to them is to, to keep the family more intact.
Yeah.
And try to do it. And to be interested in learning something about your background and heritage and all of those good things. Otherwise, they disappear.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed this. Thank you so much for allowing me to do it. It's been a genuine pleasure.
Thank you. I think it's been a pleasure for us. I really enjoyed this too.
Good.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
All right, this is Ronan again. We're back with Terry Morrow at the Village. It's about 11:40 now on July 17th. And Terry, you wanted to bring us in and talk about your family and your grandkids a little bit more.
Yes, I really appreciate you coming back. I didn't get a chance last time to say much about my family, of whom I'm very proud. And I'm also very proud of the shop we spend in, so it's great to be able to do both at the same time.
Yeah.
I'll just tell you briefly about my family. I was first married and was married for 7 years. And during that time, we had 2 wonderful kids. We finally decided we just weren't right for each other and we separated. And she went her way and I went my way, but I've had great joy out of my children and grandchildren since then. I had a son and a daughter, both of whom live by coincidence in the same city in Chicago, near Chicago, Elmhurst, Illinois. My son is a physician in a number of hospitals, but he's the medical director at one, and he's also a hospital doctor at the others. And so he's a pediatrician, and he's been very successful in adapting to hospital life, and he has had a lot of promotions and won a number of teaching awards since he's on the faculty as well. He decided in his senior year, while he was attending Penn State, that he wanted to go to medical school, but he was a little late making that decision, but he did get admitted to out of this country medical school in Grenada called St. Thomas. It turns out it's a marvelous medical school because a lot of doctors and faculty members from universities all over the world like to go there in the winter, especially because Grenada is not a bad place to spend a semester. And so he really received a very good medical education and then has done quite well. His wife was a teacher in the elementary school very successfully. When they had their first child, she decided she would not teach anymore, and she took a break. and now she's decided it may be time to go back to teaching. My daughter, Jill, was born first. She's a bit older than Charlie. She also lives in Elmhurst, Illinois, and I'll tell you a bit about her and her children in a few minutes, but she's married to Matthew Kelly, and she met Matthew while she was in Chicago area. After she graduated from University of Indiana University. I'd be in big trouble if I didn't change that. She graduated from Indiana University and went to work for a major accounting firm in Chicago. She remained there until she became a partner. When she was being elevated to senior partner, they wanted her to move overseas for 2 years because there were very few women in their offices overseas. She said she did not want to take her children overseas for any length of time because they were quite young, and so she resigned and has remained a wonderful mother during that time. I have 2 grandchildren named, my oldest grandson is named Brian, forgive me, and the youngest one is named Kevin. I finally have that right. Both of them attended a university that I used to not be at all fond of, called Notre Dame. They went there, I think, mainly because their father did, so it's been a family tradition. Brian graduated last year, and so he is now working for the same accounting firm that his mother had worked for. He is an auditor with that accounting firm and is very successful. So he lives in downtown Chicago, and he works a lot of hours for that auditing firm. My younger grandson, Kevin, is still at Notre Dame. He's done tremendously well, and he has just done a lot of things that I'm so proud of. He probably will spend a semester overseas next year. He wants to go to medical school, and he's studying neuroscience as one of his majors at the moment. So we're just extremely proud of both of those boys. My son has 3 daughters, okay? They kept trying, thinking it would be nice to have a son to continue the Morrow family name, but that didn't happen, and life moves on. His oldest daughter is named Addie. She decided to go to Wisconsin University, University of Wisconsin. That is an acceptable school because it's in the Big Ten, but we're very proud of the fact that she went to Wisconsin. She has really adapted tremendously well to college life and has joined a sorority and is just having a wonderful time at the University of Wisconsin. The next granddaughter is named Parker. She's still in high school. The youngest one is named Charlotte, who I'm very proud of for lots of things. She's an excellent softball player, which I never was, but she is. And one of the things I'm very happy about is she's taking piano lessons on a piano that my aunt owned when I was young. She lived with us and tried to get me to learn to play the piano. But the piano survived, but my skill certainly never progressed. So we're very, very happy about all of that part of the family. I'm not sure what else I can say about my family, except that I really adore seeing them. One of the exciting things I'm looking forward to is, this was their idea, not mine. We're going on a 3-night cruise in the Bahamas for my 85th birthday. None of them except my son and his family. My daughter was not at all thrilled about the thought of going on a ship, but they agreed to go, so we're looking forward to going on a huge mega ship to Nassau for my 85th birthday next year. I don't get to see them nearly as often as I would like, and that's for lots of reasons. I think anytime you undergo a divorce, life is just not the same after that. But I'm very happy that I have remained in such good contact with them and look forward to having lots of great-grandchildren at some point in time.
Yeah, I hope so.
I think the other day I said a bit about my grandparents, and one of the things I did not talk about was a mystery that I have never been able to solve, and I need to go back and solve. My father married my mother, who had relatives adjacent to the farm that he lived on, so it was no surprise that they met up and became married. But for some reason that I have really not been able to figure out, my grandmother's last name was Reynolds, which is the same name as my mother's family. So I really need to do a lot of research and try to figure out what the connection may have been there. And until I started doing some genealogy, I never even realized what my grandmother's maiden name was. So that is a mystery to me that has yet to be solved. Her name was Lizzie, and I never really knew her. All three of my maternal grandfather died years before I was born, so I never met him at all. But all three of both of my paternal and my maternal grands that were left died in the same year of 1947. My paternal grandmother and grandfather died within a week of each other, and my maternal grandmother died sometime that same year. Okay? So is there anything else that I should remember? My remember is not very good anymore.
So the mystery then is that you think those two sides might have been related? If they
I have no idea.
Okay.
I have no idea. I have no idea how common a name that was at that time. I just don't know.
Because it's also the name of the town, yeah? Reynoldsville?
Well, but that was that was definitely a different town. That was about 40-minute drive from where my father grew up. And I really and truly don't know what the connection was, but someday I hope to find out.
I hope so too.
And it honestly may be, since I don't have any records other than what I did through searches, it may be that it's a mistake in the the search, and that is not uncommon at all, as I understand it. So I just need to do some more search on that and see if it's really true.
Yeah. Well, as a historian, those little things are the most fun to try and uncover.
Well, I started doing it during COVID and then got distracted by writing books. And then I came back to the shop, but I'm getting, my neuropathy is getting bad in my hands now, so I think my days in the shop are pretty limited. So I hope to go back to, one of the things I want to go back to is doing a lot more genealogy than I was able to do at the time. And I really look forward to knowing more about my family as they progress. I anticipate great things for them, and I'm very, very proud of them.
So that's very exciting. Okay.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your coming back and doing that.
Yeah, we're happy to.
Well, what's laying here are a number of samples for class. I did give a lot of classes on beginning woodworking, and at the moment it's mainly on how to make pens, such as these. And so when the student comes in or resident comes in, I give them a choice of what kind of wood they would like to use and what finish they would like on their pen. And then we use my wood lathe, or one of our lathes, and we teach them, or I teach them, how to turn a pen. And from there, they hopefully come back and make all kinds of other things on the lathe. So unfortunately, I don't have many laid out here except the pens, but we do make a lot of pens. We probably have at least 1,000 pen kits here, but we'll never get them all made up. That's a finished, both of those are finished ones in two different finishes. This wood is actually olive wood that I buy from fallen, in theory, but I can't guarantee the vendors. I buy it from fallen olive trees in Bethlehem. And the other one is a piece of wood called Pugh, which comes from Central and South Africa. And it's very commonly available now, but it comes from Africa.
It's a beautiful wood.
And then we have all kinds of other woods that they use.
So if someone comes and makes a pen and they love making a pen, what's like the next step?
The next step typically is to do something else on the lathe. And then from there, we try to teach them to use all of the tools that we have in here. We have one gentleman that lives here in the village that has been very successful at using the lathe, and he comes back every week to learn to make something new. Unfortunately, he's wheelchair bound, and so it's difficult to get to a lot of the tools that we have in here. But we use what we can and have a lot of fun with him making new things. A lot of people, once they've learned to make a pen, their next hope is to make a bowl.
Yeah.
And so we make an awfully lot of bowls. And a lot of, hopefully, more and more residents are coming in to learn how to make bowls. That's camphor wood. That's camphor. That's actually wood that was made out of laminated wood that was used in the village for a repair, and so we decided to make a bowl out of the leftover, and that is made out of resin and driftwood, and it's got a long ways to go before it's completed, but someday it will be completed. That's a lathe. We used to have as many as 5 lathes at once in here, but we had a lot more people coming in using them. Now we've reduced it to 2 lathes because we don't have as many people. The shop that's here has, we like to say, any tool that a woodworker could possibly want. I can tell you just a little bit about the tools. That is a scroll saw that is used for really fine detailed work where you want to cut out an intricate pattern. And it's a good scroll saw for making small objects. We don't do large ones on it. Beside it is another big lathe. We use it for everything from bowls to pens. At the moment, we have someone that's turning canes on it, and so he makes a lot of beautiful wooden canes on it. And I don't have the patience to make a cane, but we do make a lot of them in here. We have a lot of wood. You can see, I think you're looking at the moment at the woods that's used for making bowls. Those are all bowl blanks of any kind of wood you want.
All types.
And they're all kinds, including some that are so hard that's called Purple Heart.
This one.
I started turning it and ran out of patience, so I took a break, and I'll go back to it someday. It's a really nice, and one of the problems with turning wood is you have to wait until it's completely dry, below 10%. And so a lot of wood that I buy is high moisture, and so we just have to wait and wait. I don't like to turn wet bowls. A lot of people do, but I'm too impatient. When you turn a wet bowl, you have to lay it aside for 6 months to a year to dry. The one that's behind you with the vacuum attached to it is called a CNC router. And so we can draw a plan in some type of a computer program. We import that plan into the router, and then we can detail whatever we want to make using that plan. The next 2 items that you see are chambers. One of them is a vacuum chamber that we use when we're doing resin work to compress the resin and get the air out of the resin molds. The one beside it is actually a vacuum chamber. We use it when we get wood that is starting to decay or has holes in it. So we fill it with a special kind of resin, put it under vacuum, and that vacuum pump removes the air and replaces it with resin, which we then bake in an oven at a low temperature, and we end up with a piece of wood that we can turn and do whatever we want to with it. The next tool is a flatbed sander, the one with the vacuum hose coming out of it. We can take a board of any size up to 20 inches and smooth it down just as you would with a device called a planer. So if the wood happens to be too large, we can do that and make it nice and flat and thinner as we need to. We've been in the process of reorganizing everything, so one thing I'm very proud of is we finally are labeling all of the containers that we have. That's been a long job, but it's been very successful thanks to the help of 2 young ladies that we hire to come in and help organize on occasion, since most of us are getting a little feeble to be working in here. Let me see, the hose that you see is going to a large item over in the corner. That's a dust collector that doesn't work very well, but in theory it collects, and it does collect a lot of the dust. It just never collects it all. The next items that you see are all kinds of sanders that we have. And we have different types that can do sanding of various kinds. One thing woodworkers would tell you is you never have enough clamps. And so we think we have enough, but we don't. We very often are saying, gee, we need another clamp of that size. But we have 2 bandsaws of the same make, but 2 different sizes. And we use both of those almost daily for small projects, and then for larger ones as well. We have a very high-end drill press that's computer controlled, so we can automatically control or set the speed, the depth, and everything else with it. It's really a phenomenal drill press as compared to the old ones we used to have, and it obviously gets used a lot.
Yeah.
This is the other bandsaw, and it works quite well and gets a lot of heavy use. The item beside it is called a compound sliding miter saw. It was actually donated to us in memory of a resident of the village, and we really don't get a lot of donations of that kind, but they're certainly very much appreciated, and it's a wonderful tool. The final table that you saw when you came in, that's actually a table that we have hooked to a hoist up above it so we can lift the table up. Okay. And beneath it is a very good table saw. We decided that with the age of the average user in here, we needed a safe table saw. And so we have a table saw that if you get your finger within an inch of the table saw, it shuts down automatically and clamps the blade instantly. So you may get a small nick, which I can prove does happen, from the saw blade, but it's a lot cheaper to replace the blade and the brake than it is to buy a new finger.